Elvis Presley died today. He was 42. Apparently it was a heart attack. He was found at his home in Memphis, not breathing.
One of the most famous stars in Hollywood history is dead at 36. Marilyn Monroe was found dead in bed.
One of Hollywood's brightest young stars was killed early this evening along California State Highway 466. The head-on collision took the life of James Dean.
Behind the glamour of old Hollywood lies a darker, stranger truth, one the studios never wanted you to question. What if some of its most iconic stars didn't die at all, but vanished by design? In this video, we're pulling back the velvet curtain on 12 mysterious deaths that don't quite add up, from bizarre autopsy reports to stars spotted decades after they were buried. These aren't just conspiracy theories, they're cold trails, hidden files, and chilling patterns that suggest something far more unsettling. What you're about to see will challenge what you thought you knew about fame, legacy, and death itself. And by the end, you might not be so sure who's really gone, and who just slipped into the shadows. Elvis Presley, the king who may never have left the building.
I'd like to say this, until we meet you again, may God bless you as He's blessed me. Thank you very much.
They say Elvis Presley died on August 16, 1977, but what if that was just the final act of his greatest performance? Known around the world as the king of rock and roll, Elvis was more than a music icon. He was an obsession, a movement, a living myth. And myths, as we know, never truly die. His official cause of death was a heart attack in the bathroom of Graceland, but the rumors began almost instantly, rumors that have only grown louder with time. Whispers claim that Elvis faked his death to escape the crushing weight of fame, or even more sensationally, that he entered witness protection after cooperating with the FBI. Some allege he had ties to organized crime. Others say he simply wanted peace after living in a gold-plated prison of superstardom. Sightings of Elvis poured in from all over the country. Airports, gas stations, even working as a groundskeeper under the name John Burroughs, an alias Presley actually used while booking hotel rooms. Then, there's the funeral. His middle name, Aaron, was misspelled on the tombstone as Aaron. Was it a simple error, or a deliberate clue, as theorists insist, because Elvis wouldn't want his real name on a grave unless he was truly dead? His body reportedly looked waxy, too still, almost like a mannequin. Even family members were said to be puzzled by his appearance in the coffin. Whether these are fragments of truth, or just the desperate hope of fans who couldn't let go, the legend remains. To this day, some claim to have seen him, older, heavier, but unmistakably Elvis. Could the king have stepped off stage for good, or just slipped into the shadows, where he could finally live as a man instead of a monument? Marilyn Monroe, the blonde bombshell who knew too much.
Yes, it is a very happy time. I'm happy to be back. As I said, it's my hometown.
Yes.
On the night of August 4th, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found lifeless in her Los Angeles home, a tragic end, they said, to a troubled star. But in the decades since, her death has become one of the most debated, analyzed, and shrouded mysteries in Hollywood history. Officially ruled a suicide by barbiturate overdose, the story never quite added up, and many believe it was never meant to. Marilyn wasn't just a movie star. She was a symbol of American desire, vulnerability, and power. But behind the glamour was a woman who had grown dangerously close to the most powerful men in the country. Her alleged affairs with President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert placed her in the heart of political storms few could survive. Some believe she knew too much and said too much about matters the government would keep buried. The autopsy was rushed. Her internal organs were destroyed before they could be examined further. No drinking glass was ever found in the room, despite the high number of pills she allegedly swallowed. And her diary, rumored to contain damaging secrets, vanished without a trace. Friends, investigators, even former law enforcement officials have gone on record to say something was wrong. Something was missing. Then came the theories. Was Marilyn silenced? Or, in a twist almost too unbelievable to ignore, did she fake her death to escape the clutches of the FBI, the media, or the Kennedy dynasty itself? Some suggest she was whisked away, hidden under a new identity, protected by those who loved her or feared what she knew. To this day, unanswered questions linger like cigarette smoke in a Hollywood dressing room. Her smile may be immortalized in celluloid, but the truth behind her final hours remains maddeningly elusive. If Marilyn Monroe was America's most desired woman, then perhaps she simply became too dangerous to keep alive, or too clever to stay in plain sight. James Dean, the rebel who may have never crashed.
Life can be beautiful.
He was the face of youthful rebellion, a soul too wild to be tamed. And on September 30th, 1955, James Dean was declared dead after a high-speed car crash in his silver Porsche 550 Spyder. He was just 24. But almost instantly, doubt crept in, and over the years, a darker possibility began to take shape. What if the crash wasn't the end, but the escape? The official story goes like this. Dean, a rising star with only a handful of films to his name, died in a head-on collision on a California highway. But fans and skeptics alike have long questioned the details. The crash was sudden, and the body, severely damaged, was quickly taken away with little opportunity for the public to verify the identity. The mangled remains of his car were displayed in safety exhibitions, but then mysteriously vanished. No one knows where they are now. And then there were the sightings. Reports surfaced throughout the late 1950s and 60s of a man who looked remarkably like Dean, older, quieter, living in Europe or occasionally in small American towns under different names. Was it grief-fueled delusion, or had the young star orchestrated a permanent exit to escape the pressure of sudden fame? Some allege Dean was deeply disillusioned with Hollywood, with rumors suggesting he had grown fearful, paranoid even, about being watched or used. What truly fuels the legend is how eerily prophetic Dean's own words were. Just days before the crash, he filmed a public service announcement warning people to drive safely, ending with the now infamous words, "The life you save might be mine." Coincidence? Or coded goodbye? Some believe he was tired of the spotlight and used the wreck as a smokescreen, a carefully staged tragedy that allowed him to vanish, to live quietly, anonymously, far from the myth he had become. Because for someone who said, "Live fast, die young," perhaps the greatest rebellion of all was to survive in secret. Carole Lombard, the starlet who vanished in the clouds.
Go ahead.
Oscar, you're complete. The most horrible excuse for a human being that ever walked on two legs.
On January 16th, 1942, America wept. Carole Lombard, the dazzling queen of screwball comedies and wife of Clark Gable, was killed in a fiery plane crash near Mount Potosi, Nevada. She had just finished a successful war bond tour, hailed as a patriotic heroine. The headlines were swift and final. But for some, her story never quite landed. The official narrative claims her plane, TWA Flight 3, slammed into a mountainside just 23 minutes after takeoff, killing all 22 on board. But early reports were riddled with contradictions. Was the navigation system faulty? Was the crew exhausted? Why was the military so quick to seal off the site? And perhaps most curious of all, why was there never a public viewing of Lombard's remains? Friends close to her claimed she had become increasingly paranoid before the trip, worried she was being watched, followed, even targeted. Others whispered of growing tension between her and powerful figures in Hollywood's elite, men tied to wartime propaganda efforts and military intelligence. Was she just in the wrong place at the wrong time, or was she trying to disappear? Conspiracy theorists allege Lombard's death may have been staged, a necessary cover for something larger. One theory suggests she was recruited by U.S. intelligence, and the crash was faked to place her under deep cover during World War II. Far-fetched? Maybe, but no less unbelievable than other wartime secrets we've since uncovered. The location of the crash, remote, treacherous, and sealed from public access for decades, only deepens the mystery. Photos were scarce, bodies reportedly beyond recognition. And yet, some claimed they saw a woman matching Lombard's description in Europe years later, elegant, poised, silent. Was Carole Lombard truly lost to the flames that night, or was the fire just a smokescreen for something far more secretive? Bela Lugosi, the vampire who refused to die.
Fuck you! Karloff does not deserve to smell my shit!
He made death look seductive, and maybe, just maybe, he mastered it. Bela Lugosi, the haunting face of Count Dracula, died in 1956, or so the world was told. But for a man who was buried in his vampire cape, in full costume, no less, rumors were bound to rise from the grave. Officially, Lugosi died of a heart attack at age 73 in his modest Los Angeles apartment. But the timing was odd. His career had long declined, but just before his death, he'd been working on a comeback project with cult director Ed Wood. Some allege the filming stopped not because Lugosi died, but because he vanished. What followed was stranger still. His funeral was famously theatrical. Hundreds gathered to say goodbye, yet many left unsettled. Some claimed his body looked too perfect, almost staged. Others whispered that he had always dreamed of becoming his most iconic character, and maybe he finally did. Then came the sightings, in shadowy corners of Europe, in small-town theaters where an eerie man with a Hungarian accent would appear, only to disappear again. One particularly persistent rumor told of a man living quietly in the Romanian countryside, near Lugosi's birthplace, whose identity could never quite be verified. Of course, most dismiss these as fan fantasies, desperate to keep Dracula alive. But it wasn't just the public fueling the mystery. Even colleagues admitted Lugosi spoke often, obsessively, about escaping fame's curse. He believed the public had stolen his soul. What better irony than for the world to believe him dead while he walked among them, free at last? Whether a master of illusion or simply a victim of fading fame, Lugosi's death has never quite felt final. After all, what is death to a vampire? And what better ending or beginning for the man who made immortality look so terribly real? Howard Hughes, the billionaire who disappeared twice.
I put the sweat of my life into this thing. I have my reputation rolled up in it.
By the time Howard Hughes was declared dead in 1976, he had already vanished from public life decades before. The reclusive billionaire, aviator, filmmaker, and one-time Hollywood heartthrob had become a ghost long before his body was wheeled into a morgue. But what if the man who died wasn't Hughes at all? Officially, he succumbed to kidney failure on a flight to Houston, his body emaciated, covered in needle marks, his hair and nails grotesquely overgrown. But when the corpse was brought in, not even his own aides could positively identify him by sight. They had to use fingerprints. The face was barely recognizable. And with that, one of the richest and most mysterious men in American history was laid to rest. Or was he? For years, Hughes had lived in a swirl of conspiracy and control. Locked in hotel rooms, issuing commands through sealed doors, never seen, barely heard. Some say he had long since died and been replaced. Others insist he staged his own death to escape legal threats, financial chaos, and, most of all, the constant invasion of his myth. With billions at stake and enemies in every shadow, it wasn't just possible, it was logical. Then came the sightings in Nicaragua, the Bahamas, even in small American towns. A tall man, gaunt but alive, with long fingernails and a trembling voice, who seemed to appear wherever reporters weren't looking. One woman swore she saw him in Mexico years after his reported death, living under a fake name and guarded by former employees. Even more chilling, in 2003, a sealed document was discovered in a Nevada safe deposit box, allegedly written by Hughes after his death. Its contents, never made public. Could Hughes, the master of aviation and engineering, have engineered his own disappearance? Could the man who once said, "I want to be remembered as the world's greatest mystery," have pulled off the ultimate vanishing act? When a man controls the skies, the silver screen, and the government's attention, maybe death itself is just another illusion. Thelma Todd, the ice cream blonde and the garage of secrets.
How about you and I getting together for a nice, quiet little supper?
On December 16, 1935, Thelma Todd, the radiant star of 1930s comedies, was found dead in her car, slumped behind the wheel inside a garage on a chilly Hollywood hillside. The official cause? Carbon monoxide poisoning. An accident, they said, but anyone who knew Thelma, or the men she kept close, might tell you a very different story. And some even whisper she didn't die that night at all. Todd, nicknamed the Ice Cream Blonde, was at the height of her career and the center of a glamorous, turbulent world. She owned a successful cafe on the Pacific Coast Highway, had tangled relationships with studio heads and suspected mobsters, including notorious gangster Lucky Luciano, and was known to be fiercely independent in an era that didn't tolerate that in women. So when her lifeless body was discovered, questions swirled like coastal fog. Her face was bruised. Blood was found inside her car. And the position of her body didn't match the theory of accidental asphyxiation. Even stranger, reports said she had been dressed in evening clothes, but with no coat, despite the freezing December weather. Some investigators believed she had died elsewhere and been placed in a car to stage a scene, but the case was quickly closed. Or accidental death. No charges, no trial, just silence. Over the years, new theories emerged that she had been killed for refusing to let Luciano use her cafe for illegal gambling, or that a jealous lover silenced her after a bitter argument. But then came the rumors that shook even seasoned Hollywood historians. What if Thelma Todd staged her own death? What if the mounting pressure, the threats, the betrayals, the secrets had become too much, and she used the garage not as a tomb, but as a portal to disappear? Some claim to have seen her years later, in Europe, under a new name, hiding in plain sight among the forgotten starlets of a vanished era. Did Thelma Todd fall victim to a deadly plot? Or did Hollywood's golden girl slip into the night, leaving behind nothing but exhaust fumes, rumors, and one very, very suspicious corpse? George Reeves, the Superman who took flight one last time, or did he? He was Superman to an entire generation, bulletproof on screen, invincible in the minds of millions. But on June 16, 1959, George Reeves was found dead in his bedroom, a single gunshot wound to the head. The official verdict? But the evidence, the witnesses, the silence, they all tell a much darker and more suspicious story. And for some, the possibility remains, what if George Reeves didn't die that night at all? The details are murky, unsettling, and riddled with inconsistencies. His fiancée and friends were downstairs at the time of the shot. No one heard the gunfire immediately. The bullet was lodged in the ceiling. No fingerprints were found on the weapon. Even the trajectory of the bullet didn't quite match the angle of a self-inflicted wound. And the strangest part? There were bruises on Reeves' body, ones that didn't line up with the side. Behind the scenes, George Reeves was entangled in something far more dangerous than a bad contract or fading fame. He had been in a long affair with the wife of MGM executive Eddie Mannix, a man with rumored ties to the mob and a reputation for making problems disappear. When Reeves tried to end the affair and move on with his life, friends say threats began to surface. So what really happened? Was he silenced to protect reputations? Did someone in that house pull the trigger and help stage a suicide? Or, in the theory that pushes this mystery into legend, did Reeves somehow fake his death to escape the growing threats around him? Some fans believe the death was a staged exit, a calculated vanishing act by a man who no longer wanted to be known only as Superman. There are even unconfirmed reports of a man matching his description seen years later in South America, using a false name, living quietly in exile. George Reeves once said, "Everybody wants to be Superman, but nobody wants to be Clark Kent." Maybe, just maybe, George Reeves figured out how to stop pretending by becoming someone else entirely. Dorothy Kilgallen, the reporter who knew too much.
Kelby will never get me back on the paper. I'm a gentleman now.
Dorothy Kilgallen wasn't just a gossip columnist. She was one of the only journalists with the nerve, access, and brains to dig into what no one else would touch. By 1965, she had become a household name through her work on What's My Line? But behind the glamour and sharp, it was a reporter obsessed with one question: who really killed John F. Kennedy? And then one November morning, she was dead. Officially, she died in her New York apartment from a mix of alcohol and barbiturates. But friends and colleagues immediately raised red flags. Dorothy had shown no signs of depression. She wasn't known for mixing drugs. She had just returned from Dallas, where she claimed to have uncovered explosive information about the JFK assassination. She told close friends she was about to blow the case wide open. She carried secret notes, had private interviews with Jack Ruby, and confided in a handful of trusted confidants that she was on the verge of publishing something that would shake the country. But those notes vanished. Her files? Gone. Her research partner? Silenced by fear. And perhaps the most haunting clue of all, the only other person she reportedly shared her full findings with, a friend named Florence Smith, died mysteriously just 2 days after Kilgallen. That's when the theories began. Did someone eliminate Dorothy before she could speak out? Was her death a quiet hit dressed as a sleepy accident? Or, in a twist worthy of spy fiction, did Kilgallen orchestrate her own disappearance, aware that what she knew could get her killed? Some believe she was moved into witness protection under an alias, protected by powerful forces who believed in her cause. Others claim she resurfaced years later under a new name, publishing anonymously from the shadows, continuing her investigation in secret. The only thing more dangerous than what she uncovered was what she might have lived to tell. Jean Harlow, the platinum blonde with a vanishing truth.
Are we going to Florida this winter, sweetheart?
She was Hollywood's original blonde bombshell, luminous, scandalous, and untouchable. But in June 1937, at just 26 years old, Jean Harlow died suddenly of kidney failure. Or so they claimed. Behind the headlines and hospital reports lies a darker, more elusive narrative, one that's been whispered for decades. Did Jean Harlow really die, Or did someone make her disappear? Harlow had been filming Saratoga with Clark Gable when she collapsed on set. Within days, her condition worsened, nausea, bloating, confusion. She was taken to the hospital, and then she was gone. The official cause was uremic poisoning brought on by undiagnosed kidney disease. But here's where the mystery deepens. Friends and co-workers reported that Harlow's symptoms didn't align with kidney failure. They looked more like poisoning. Her face was reportedly swollen and discolored, and she had bruises no one could explain. Others pointed out how quickly MGM rushed to finish Saratoga without her, using doubles and re-edit scenes to wrap production. It was as if they had been prepared for her exit. Some conspiracy theorists believe Harlow had stumbled onto something, a scandal involving the studio, money laundering, or even a relationship that crossed dangerous lines. Was she silenced? Or did someone help her vanish before she became a liability? Then came the whispers. Sightings of a Harlow lookalike in France, rumors of an anonymous woman living in luxury in Monte Carlo, always blonde, always alone. And perhaps most chilling of all, a series of anonymous letters sent to a Los Angeles columnist in the 1950s claiming Harlow's death had been staged and that she was very much alive, but never to return. Her mother, known as Mother Jean, was notoriously controlling and refused an autopsy. To this day, many believe she knew far more than she ever let on and may have played a role in keeping the truth buried. Was Jean Harlow the tragic victim of illness or the centerpiece of one of Hollywood's earliest and most successful vanishing acts? The legend is platinum, but the truth? Still covered in shadows. Natalie Wood, the star who never left the water.
You can talk and talk, but I'm not gonna go.
She was Hollywood royalty, a child star turned leading lady, a symbol of grace, vulnerability, and power. But on the night of November 29, 1981, Natalie Wood vanished from the deck of her yacht, the Splendor, off the coast of Catalina Island. Hours later, her body was found floating face down in the water, clad in a flannel nightgown, socks, and a red jacket. The official cause: drowning, an accident. But from the moment her body was recovered, nothing about her death made sense. She wasn't alone on that boat. Her husband, actor Robert Wagner, was there. So was actor Christopher Walken and the yacht's captain, Dennis Davern. But what happened between dinner and death has remained buried beneath silence, contradictions, and decades of fear. The original investigation was swift and inconclusive. Bruises on her arms and legs were brushed aside. The dinghy was found unmoored, yet Natalie was reportedly terrified of dark water and never would have left the yacht alone. Wagner, who allegedly argued with her that night, changed his story multiple times. The captain later claimed Wagner delayed calling for help. Even Walken has remained eerily tight-lipped. But then, 30 years later, the case was reopened. The cause of death changed from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. And in 2018, Robert Wagner was officially named a person of interest. That's not rumor, that's fact. Yet still, no charges, no trial, no justice, which has led some to believe the unthinkable. What if Natalie Wood didn't die at all that night? What if the chaos on that yacht was a performance, a staged tragedy to help her escape an industry that had consumed her since she was a child? Some claim she'd spoken of wanting to disappear, to raise her daughters in peace, away from the cameras and the past. Others believe she was silenced and that those closest to her helped bury the truth. But a darker theory persists that the entire narrative, from the panic to the body, was part of a carefully crafted illusion. Natalie Wood once said, "The only time a woman really succeeds in changing a man is when he is a baby." But perhaps she discovered something far more powerful than changing anyone else, the power to disappear and leave the world wondering forever. They were icons, dreamers, rebels, and romantics. Some dazzled the screen for decades. Others were gone in a flash. But what all these stories share is the uneasy truth that in Hollywood, nothing is ever quite what it seems. Whether these stars truly faked their deaths, were victims of cover-ups, or simply became legends too large to accept as gone, we may never know. Theories persist, sightings surface, details vanish, and somewhere between fact and folklore, the mystery only deepens. But one thing remains certain: their presence endures. In films and stories, in whispered rumors and flickering black and white frames. Maybe they didn't vanish after all. Maybe they just transformed into something untouchable, eternal. If this journey through old Hollywood's most haunting mysteries left you thinking twice about what's real and what's performance, you're not alone. Which story struck you the most? Do you believe any of these stars truly escaped into shadows? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read everyone. And if you love dark legends, unsolved Hollywood mysteries, and stories that blur the line between truth and illusion, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because we've only scratched the surface.